What's cracking, everybody? So, um, just relaxing here, enjoying the sounds of the night outside. And it's pretty late, but I wanted to do this vlog. Something that has been personally an interest of mine, and something I've followed throughout the entire time that it's been in the public eye, even out of the public eye, and that would be the West Memphis 3. For those of you that are not familiar, it's three young men, some considered children at the time, which are now men, that were convicted of the murders of children that they did not admit to committing, and based on everything that was presented in many people's minds and in my mind, did not commit. There was a documentary made. This was May 5th, 1993, that this event took place, following interviews with the police, questioning, and interrogations. Jesse Miss Kelly, which was one of the gentlemen in question, confessed, and basically it was a coerced confession from the West Memphis Police Department in Arkansas. All three went to jail and had, up until earlier this afternoon, which would be yesterday, because technically it's now the 20th, had been in jail and were just released. This was came to quite a surprise of a lot of people, and it was funny because I hadn't even heard, and Heather was watching something about, she said the West Memphis 3 are free, and it kind of stopped me in my tracks, and I was like, what? And she said they're free, and I kind of went, yes! And, she kind of looked at me like, wow, that was a pretty intense, you're kind of into that, like it was unexpected. And what she didn't know is that I had been following the trial from the beginning. I mean, literally from the point that it was in the news, the incident hit the news, to now. There's a couple of documentaries that have come out since. I'm going to link everything that really can get you started if you don't know anything about it, or even if you just want to brush up on it, about the West Memphis 3. There was the first documentary came out called Paradise Lost: The Child Murders at Robin Hood Hills, which talked to Jason, Damien, and Jesse, the three boys. I also talked to parents of the murdered children and people in the community. Basically, this was a very Bible Belt Christian, fundamentalist Christian community, and part of the country that, these guys had long hair, and they listened to heavy metal music, and Damien wore black, and they were supposedly into Satan, and were involved in satanic rituals and homoerotic orgies and all this other shit that basically people made up. Rumors and hearsay and innuendo and bullshit. which is basically what got them convicted, because the state didn't have a single fucking piece of physical evidence, and to this day has no physical evidence linking those three men to the crime. Basically what they did to get free, because they had a trial coming up December 5th of this year, and Damien Echols was originally denied. When he was sentenced to death. Jesse was sentenced to life imprisonment with two consecutive 20-year sentences on top of that, and Jason was convicted of life. And basically Damien's appeal was rejected. Now he had technically, I think, or officially had been past his date of execution, so he was kind of operating on borrowed time as it was. But the Supreme Court looked over that denial and decided that the view of the new evidence, because new evidence came out basically, that the three men weren't linked to the killings at all. New DNA evidence showing that it didn't belong to them, it belonged to someone else, which was actually Terry Hobbs, one of the fathers of one of the three boys who was murdered. So the Supreme Court kind of overruled the judge and decided that these three men, now men, would have new trials, which were set for December. So the state came in and offered them a deal. These men had been in jail the better part of, I know Damien had been in solitary confinement the better part of 10 years, and these men had been in jail the better part of the last, 18, something like that. They'd been in different facilities, but the idea, imagining that spending that much time in prison for a crime you didn't commit, and basically growing up, spending your 20s and into your 30s in prison, the type of things that they were subjected to there, I can only imagine the kind of changes, permanent changes that they've gone through in their life. So basically, they entered Alford pleas, ALFORD, which are basically pleas where they do not admit the act or the crime and still assert their innocence, but they basically admit that there's enough evidence that they could be convicted of the crime, and it's entered as a guilty plea. So basically, they had to essentially plead guilty, even though they don't actually admit to committing the crime, and still assert their innocence. It goes on record as a guilty plea. Now, Jason, one of the young men, wanted to continue fighting, but realized that, through all of this, and after time, I can only imagine how it changed their minds, and maybe possibly their attitudes about each other. There could have been any amount of bitterness or anger that had grown between any three of them. But Jason actually, the reason that Damien was free and is free today is basically all on Jason's shoulders, because he wanted to continue to fight. He did not want to accept the Alford plea, but he did, because he knew that Damien had suffered so much, and suffered worse than either Jesse or himself, that he didn't want to be in jail anymore. He didn't want Damien or Jesse to be in jail anymore, and he needed the most convincing to do this. So it was an act of bravery on his part, even though he wanted to continue to fight and plead his innocence. he sacrificed and made the sacrifice for all three of them, which says a lot about his integrity. And what's interesting is, one of the attorneys made an excellent point. There's a press conference that was televised. There's a Jack Look for Heather has it featured and uploaded, where one of the attorneys says, look, you're asking all these questions about, how they feel and what they've been through, and he said, if anyone, he said, let me say this, basically, I'm kind of paraphrasing, he said, if anyone thinks that the state would ever let these three men go if they had even one single shred of evidence that could keep them in jail, can keep them convicted and keep them in jail, do you think for a second that they would let them go free? And that answer is no. And with these new upcoming trials and the fact that they had no physical evidence, they were going to get fucking shredded. The state of Arkansas, the city of West Memphis, I mean, there was a lot of people that were going to pay, that were going to look like idiots, assholes, and incompetents. And I mean, they would have opened themselves up for millions and millions of dollars in civil suits and restitution. So they offered the Alfred pleas and they were taken. So that's where we stand right now. I'm going to leave a whole lot of links. That there's a trailer to the first documentary. If you've never seen it, there's I've got all 9 parts that were uploaded by another user for the second documentary, Paradise Lost 2, and there's actually a third one, I think, that was coming up in it's called Paradise Lost 3, Purgatory. I had a little clip about it. So check out the links if you've followed the West Memphis 3. Oh, also there was a CD, an album that was put out called Rise Above, 24 Black Flag songs. It was to help raise money for the West Memphis 3's defense. And a lot of that was many of the songs were sung by Henry Rollins, and there were other artists on it. So that's a pretty cool thing. I put a link to that to Amazon just so you can check it out. If you'd like to get that, I snagged that a while ago and have that in my own collection right now. So anyway, that's it. West Memphis 3 are free. Who fucking rah, and hopefully some future justice will be served to the Cretan criminal motherfuckers that actually did the crime. So that's it, folks, for me for now. You can go out in the silence of the night sounds.